In this video, we're going to go over the disassembly and reassembly of your Tippmann 98 Custom Platinum Series with the ACT. I'll also be going over some of the changes that we've made in comparison to the 98 Custom. So there's quite a few changes that we made, but first I want to get into disassembling the marker. It's going to be a lot easier to disassemble than your old 98 Custom, and that's one of the main things that we've tried to do here. So what I'm first going to do is I'm going to remove your gas line, or just loosen the gas line, because you want to actually field strip this 98 Custom Platinum Series, and you're going to use a 7/16 wrench to actually do that. I'm just going to loosen it for now. I'm not going to totally take it all the way out. And then from there, you're going to need a 1/8 Allen key to remove all your receiver bolts and take your rear end of the receiver off. Now, one cool thing about this is on the old 98, you used to have to take out your tank adapter bolts. You no longer have to do this on the Platinum Series, so it makes it a lot easier to take apart. So we'll go ahead, we'll remove our receiver bolts here, speed up the process. Go ahead and set that off to the side. Now you can see that with this marker it has the ACT already installed, so you're going to have two springs in the back of your rear bolt. This center spring, and I'll go ahead and remove the end cap. This center spring is your main drive spring, and then you have your ACT spring. And then you also have a little O-ring that's kind of free floating back here. That's called your buffer O-ring. And that's actually supposed to free float in the back end of the gun there, and that's fine. You can see that there's a little bit of difference between the ACT spring. You have a little bit of longer section here, and then the shorter section, which actually goes into the end cap. So I'll just kind of leave this whole assembly together, and we'll put that off to the side for now. And then from there, you can finish removing your gas line. Just totally unthread it and pull it out of the bottom. One thing you also want to be aware of is some of the springs in here. They could possibly just kind of pop out a little bit. We'll go ahead and remove those two just so they don't spring out, fly across the room. And then we'll go ahead, we'll pull our rear bolt, our power tube, and our valve assembly out of the marker. And that's pretty much it as far as pulling the whole bolt assembly out. You'll have some things that are left over here, your ACT pins, which are going to be really hard to see in this area, but we'll get you a close-up shot. And there are your ACT pins. And then you have your trigger, your sear, and one cool thing that we've changed with the Platinum Series over the older 98 is that these pins, they're actually knurled on the end and press fitted in, so they'll stay nice and tight. And then we also changed the power tube, so you don't have a little nub that sticks through the receiver. You just have your air ports that are kind of threaded in on the right side of the receiver here, just in case you want to add a cyclone or a response trigger. So that makes it a little bit nicer, a little bit easier to install your accessories. I'll go ahead and we'll also remove the barrel, and we'll take off the front half of the receiver just to kind of show you some of the differences there. Let's go ahead and pull that receiver, and you can see where this nut kind of fell out. Now this nut is actually for your gas line. The gas line is a pressure fit gas line, so you don't need any kind of sealant or anything like that, which makes it really nice. And we'll get a close-up shot of the valve here. And then with that close-up shot of the valve, we'll also do a close-up shot of the gas line. And that's, like I said, that's a pressure fit gas line, so you don't need any kind of thread tape or thread sealant or anything like that. We'll also get a close-up shot of your ball latch here. And the ball latch, you always want to make sure that you have in correctly. If you have it in backwards, that'll obviously keep the gun from firing. So you want to make sure that you always have that with the open face pointing towards the barrel. Another thing that you can see that we've changed is our front sight. You no longer have to worry about the front sight just popping out and flying across the room. You know, that's not going to happen anymore. There's actually a pin that holds that whole assembly in and is press fit in, so it'll never come out. So I mean, you can push that, you can move it around, and it's not going to go flying around anywhere. So that's just the basic disassembly. We'll go ahead and start putting this back together. We'll go ahead and get our front half of the receiver back on. We'll go ahead and get that snugged up. Now you want to make sure you don't put that front sight screw too tight, or your front sight won't go down and you won't be able to remove your feeder elbow. And then from there we'll go ahead, put our linkage arm, and you'll see that the linkage arm is a little bent here. That's okay, that's actually the way it's designed. That's to help your ACT work correctly. So we'll go ahead and put that all back together, and we'll kind of just slide this whole bolt assembly back into the marker. You might have your ACT spring cup come out too whenever you're putting that linkage arm assembly in there. That's okay. You're just going to slide that back into position. Go ahead and put your trigger back in, your sear. You can see that the sear is similar to the A5 sear. We did that so you can put that E-trigger in and get a really fast firing gun out of it. Go ahead and put our springs back in here. And what I'm doing here is I'm actually just kind of wiggling the bolt to find that hole so the spring can actually go through the bolt handle into the bolt. It'll make it really hard to do if you can't get that hole to line up. Then just go ahead and put your end cap back on. And one little trick that I like to use when reinstalling the gas line is I just go ahead and I just thread that gas line in by hand. And what I'm doing here is I'm just trying to get the gas line to line up with the valve assembly. If you don't get that lined up correctly and you go to tighten down your gas line, what will happen is you'll actually kind of wallow out the hole on the underside of the valve assembly, and that'll cause it to leak. And it doesn't matter what you try to do to get that leak to stop, it'll just continue because you didn't have that gas line lined up correctly. So I just kind of line it up, make sure you get it in there. Just hand tight is sufficient. You don't want to wrench down on it at this point because you can actually crack the body half of the receiver. So I got that lined up correctly now. We can go ahead and put our receiver half back on. Got that back on. Go ahead and tighten up our receiver bolts. And then from there you can go ahead and tighten down your gas line. Go ahead and reinstall your barrel. And that is your basic disassembly and reassembly of the Tippmann 98 Custom Platinum Series.